In this presentation, we'll continue on with our bank rules. We'll enter some more bank rules and just some general techniques as we add the rest of our data. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Online. Here we are with our Get Great Guitars file. Let's start off by opening up our reports. We're going to open up both of them this time, that being the balance sheet first. We're going to select the balance sheet first. And let's change the dates up top, making those dates from 05/01/20 to, let's make it 06/30/20, 06/30/20. Run that report. Right-click on the tab up top and duplicate that tab. Back to the tab to the left. Let's do it again. Back down to the reports with the P&L this time, the profit and loss, the income statement. Changing the dates, same range, that being from 01/20 to 06/30/20. And then we're going to run that report. Let's duplicate that tab up top, right-clicking on it and duplicating that tab. So we have our financial statements. Now we're going to be working on the tab to the left. Back to the tab to the left, we're going to be going to the banking section. So here is our banking section. I'm going to duplicate this tab so we can be going back and forth between the rules and the banking. So I'm going to right-click on the tab up top. I'm going to duplicate this tab, and we'll be dealing with the rules on the right, the banking section on the left. All right, now that we have that all set up, I'm going to close up the old hamburger up top. And let's just go through some of this other data and see if we can add this as we go and think about how the rules that might be populated as we go through it. So now we have the American Express. So we have American Express, our next item. Note that you may have different credit cards for American Express. And that, again, that might be another situation where you'd want to break out between, the one credit card versus another credit card. Now, on the banking side of things, you can just imagine on the banking side of things that we have the American Express that we're going to be paying to American Express, the credit card company. However, we may also have bank feeds from American Express, the credit card, on the credit card side of things as well. So the bank feeds on the credit card, when we make a payment, will show up on American Express bank feeds as credit card payment that we're going to have to enter in some way. The other side should be going to this account, the checking account. And when we see the bank feeds from the checking account, then that should be tied out, you would think, to the American Express account. So the problem is that they're going to be on both sides. Now, using the match feature, you should be able to match them up, but it might be safer in some cases to simply use a clearing account to tie both of them, make both of them go into the clearing account. And therefore, once you match up and see the bank feeds being cleared for the American Express and the bank for the payment, then it should match out. The clearing account should zero out. So sometimes I use the clearing account to do that. So for that kind of setup, if I was to open this up, it says it's found a match here, but I'm just going to set up the general rule, which is going to be to add them. This is the general rule that I might set up, and I'm going to add them, and I'm going to be adding it to the clearing account. So I'm going to call this American Express. So there we have that. And then the category. So note it's going to the credit card account here. I want to put it to the credit card clearing account. Right, I'm going to put it here to the clearing account. And then once the two match up, they should match up and tie each other out. Now, I didn't make this perfectly to match up in this case, but that's kind of the general rule that we would have there. So then I'm going to say, it has down here then, create a rule from this transaction. But if I don't do that, if I just say, add the transaction in that case, so we just added it, it's still kind of picking up these other two, right, on the American Express. Let's see what it's doing here for the American Express on this one. It says there's a match. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to add. I'm going to add it here. I'm going to say the vendor is American Express, or American Express. So there it is. I hope I picked the last one up right. And it's going to the credit card. And we want to make it go to the credit card clearance. So I'm going to say credit card clearing account. I want to pick this one up, and this time I'm going to make it a rule. So let's create a rule down here and just say I'd like to do that every time. So American Express, and I'm just going to say money out, and then I want it to contain that text in it. I don't want the amount though. The amount I don't need to be the same every time. So I'm going to take the amount off, just removing that. And it's going to be an expense account, and it's going to the clearing account. So the payee is American Express, and it's going to that clearing account. So that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now we have that rule applied. So that should apply, you would think, to these two. Let's go to the second one. And it's still going to the match feature. So it's still trying to match that up. I'm going to say add and take this to rule applied American Express. Now it's applying the rule. So there we have. So I put it back to the add. So the match is going to be the default first. And then if you go back to add, it's going to apply the American Express rule. So that looks good. I'm going to close that up. And now we have the two going to the rule up top. If I go to this one, I want to add the rule. So I'm going to close this back out. So now they're both being applied out by the rule. I'm going to hold down Control and select those two and accept the selected items there. Okay, this one we have Audible. So Audible's another form of income. So let's say we make Audible books. For Amazon owns Audible, and if you make a book or whatever, they pay you. So we're going to say that's another form of income. So if I add that, we're going to say that the vendor is, let's just say, Audible. And oftentimes you can copy the vendor up top. So I'm just going to copy the vendor and then put that down here and tab. And actually it's a customer in this case. I keep saying vendor, but this is money in. So it's going to be a customer. I'm going to save that. And the category, I'm just going to call it Audible income. It's going to be an income account from Audible. And I'm going to say that this is going to be an income type of account, other primary income account. Save and close that. And then it's saying that we set an Audible audit to Audible from now on. So it's going to be basically kind of setting up a rule for it. So I'm going to say add that. And then this next one, it's picking up. Now notice it's not a rule necessarily that it's picking up. It's just saying, hey, I recognize that. But we don't see the little rule thing up in front of it. If I wanted to set up a rule, then I'd have to give it more detail. So note when it picks this up, it's recognizing it. But I don't have the control. I can't really find what's being recognized over here unless I was to solidify that into basically a rule that I can then manipulate myself. So generally, if that picks it up, that's usually good enough for things that are pretty straightforward. You don't really need a rule. If it's recognizing it, that's typically good enough. You can go forward. If you need more detail, however, you need to add the rule so that you have more control over it. So I'm going to add that. Then we have this item. Notice we have a check, 1806. Now, sometimes with the bank feeds, when you have a check, you don't have the detail of the check, right? You don't have the clear check, and you'd have to go into online banking or whatever and take a look at the actual check. So you need to look at the actual check to see what the vendor name is on it. Not too difficult if you have online banking, because you could just jump on there. Usually they have the image of the check that you wrote. However, if you write checks, oftentimes you would want to put them in the system when you write them, because you might as well, right? But if you don't do that, if you just write the check and it goes out, like if you wrote the check, then when it comes in, it would be a matching. You'd have to match it. You would already have it in the system, and you simply just match it out. However, if you're not doing that because you just don't want to put it in the system and you'd rather just wait till it clears, and that's fine, then when it clears, it still might not have the name of the check, and you're going to have to go into Wells Fargo or whatever your bank is. Our mock bank here is Wells Fargo, and check to see if the check has then cleared, and if it has, then what's going to be the name on the check. So we can say this one. If we go into this one, I'm just going to say this was for, let's say I'm just say government. I'm just going to say it's for taxes, and I'm going to save that, and I'm going to put taxes and licenses for it, and that's it. So I'm just going to say add for taxes and licenses. Then we have the Google AdSense. So if you have, that would be received. So if you have like a YouTube channel or something, you might have Google AdSense revenue. You might want to set up a rule for that. So if I go into this, we'd say, all right, this is going to be going to, I'm going to say, and again, I could just copy the customer. It's not a vendor, it's a customer. Copy the customer, tab, add the customer here, and then, and that is it. So then I'm going to, we could create a rule, but it'll recognize it. So I'm going to say add, and it'll probably recognize the one below it. See there, it's recognizing it. If I select it and I say, well, there it is, you're recognizing it, but I'd like to create a rule about it. So then I would create a rule, and it would be the Google ad. The description it contains that. Now I don't need the amount, so it created too many conditions. I don't need the second condition, so I'll remove that condition. And then down here, it's going to be Google. It's going to be going to advertising and marketing. It's actually going to an expense account, and it should be an income account, shouldn't it? This was money coming in. So let me change this. This should be to income, Google, something like that. It's going to be an income account, and it's going to be other primary income, and we'll save and close that. And let's save that. And so, yeah, so the amount we received, now it's got a rule. So the point is that if you made a rule from it, and yes, I miscategorized the last one. It should have been income instead of an expense because we got money in this case, it looks like. But in any case, we have a rule here now. So the difference is, I just want to show you the difference. If you actually make the rule, it won't just recognize it, but it'll have a rule. The benefit of that is that when you go then to the rules tab, like if I go into the rules, then I can go in and I can find that rule, and I can adjust it. I can make it more stringent if I so choose. So that's kind of the benefit of the rules. But if the system just recognizes it, then that's usually fine as well. So I'm going to add that. Then we have the interest payment. So possibly or interest received. So possibly our bank is paying us interest. Notice the bank fee didn't tell us who the vendor really here. It didn't say, hey, like we're banking at Wells Fargo, we're saying in our mock problem. So it didn't say, hey, here's Wells Fargo as the vendor. It just said interest received. So that makes it almost easier. That's kind of nice, because then we can just say, I may not even need a vendor in that case. And it's going to go to interest expense. So that's what we want. So everything looks proper there, but I want to create a rule for it maybe and call it interest expense, and then copy that. And then, so notice it's got interest payment here. That's what we want. So then I'm going to close the second one. I don't need the second rule. It's going to go here, the payee. If we need a payee, let's call it Wells Fargo. And it's going to be a customer, we'll say. And then this one, I thought it was money coming in, so it should be interest income. Interest income. See, I'll add that. We may have another interest account somewhere, but I'm going to say it's not primary income. I might want to put interest income into like other income. I often do, because it's not like my general source of income. And then I would put it into interest income, something like that. All right. And then save and close. Save it. And now it's applying the rule out to those two. So it should be applying those out as we go. And I'm going to select those two, and I'll batch add them. So accept the selected. And then we have a mobile deposit. So this might be something like if you were to scan a deposit, if you got a check and you were like to scan it in or something like that, or then it might be able to read it in that format. But if you were to do that, that's another kind of situation that the system doesn't have all the other information like it might have if it was an electronic transfer. So if you, in those types of situations, like if you get a check from your customer and you just scanned it into your bank account from like a phone app or something like that, then it's going to show up here as just a mobile deposit, and you won't know the vendor. So if you're not doing the full service system, if you were to enter the invoice and then do the receive payment and then do this, then you can tie it out to the amount that you put into the receive payment. But if you're just waiting till it clears the bank, then you're going to have to jump over to your online banking, possibly open that up, and hopefully it'll give you a display of the deposit that you put in place, and you can determine, okay, who did I get that deposit from? Or conversely, you might just say, well, anything that I got that is a deposit is income, and therefore I'm going to put it into income. So if it's a deposit, it's income unless I put it in myself, in which case it would be it would be something else, right? And I think I included it. Oh, there it is. So then I'm going to say, maybe I don't know the vendor right here, right? All I know is it's a mobile deposit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the mobile deposit and then open this up, and let's see if we can create a rule on it. And we'll say the rule is going to be a mobile deposit, money in, description is going to have mobile deposit in it. I'm not going to have the amount. I'm just going to assume all deposits are from a customer, all income. So you could put a payee like a customer default or something like that, right? This should be customer, catch-all or customer catch-all or, something like that, just to have a customer. So there's the customer, save it. And then it's not going to accounts receivable because we're not doing the full service process. We're just taking it directly to income. So this is going to go to income, income. We'll just call it income. And there we have it. And then it's going to be going to income. It's going to be the type of account. Let's just make it service income. So there we have it. So we'll save it. Then I can save that, and it should apply that rule out to these two. So those two, the rules applied out to it. So I'm going to say, let's select those two and batch add those. And then we have a recurring transfer. Now this might be a transfer, let's say, from one account to another. So it might be going from like this account, let's say, to a savings account. If that were the case, and that's a typical kind of setup from banking accounts, they'll say, hey, you'll give a banking account, and then we'll give you like a savings account. And then if you do this, if you take money out of the bank account all the time, automatically put it in the savings account, we'll give you some kind of benefit for whatever reason. Well, that means there's going to be a transfer. Now, if you have those two accounts, the banking and the savings account, and have bank feeds on both sides, again, remember what's going to happen when you do the bank feeds for the checking account, it's going to go out, and the other side should go to the savings account, be a deposit in the savings account. However, you're also going to do the bank feeds for the savings account, which means it's going to be going in. It's going to be a receive payment on that side, and the other side should be going here to this account, but it's already here because it's going to be picked up twice, you see. Now, normally that's okay because you can use the matching function to match them out, but sometimes I can get sometimes it doesn't pick them up, right? It doesn't pick them up properly. So you may want to just use a clearing account again in that situation. Anytime you're going to have one transaction that's going to go to another account, which is also going to be picked up with bank feeds, then maybe you want to set up a clearing account related to it, right? So I might set this up and say, okay, I want to set up a rule maybe on this one. And I'm going to say savings account rule. And this one's going to be the transfer. It's going to contain reoccurring transfer, so that's fine. I'm going to close up the second one. The amount doesn't matter, although the amount might be helpful. It might be the same amount each time, but I'm going to close that one up. I don't need that. And then it's going to be a transfer is going to be the type, so we'll keep it as the transfer. And then the account that we're going to have is going to be going to, I'm going to set up the transfer clearing account and tab, and I'll set this up, and I'll typically not a bank account but an other current asset. I don't really want to make it an expense account because those close out. They're temporary, they close out. So I'd rather have my clearing account being a permanent account so it doesn't have that thing where it closes out at the end of the year and it'll be difficult to see if it's zero. It should be zero after the two transactions happen. So you want either an asset or a liability, typically, if you're using a clearing account of any kind. And so then we're going to have, this is going to be the subcategory. Let's just pick the organizational costs, and that's it. I'm going to save that, and then OK. And so now we're going to have that bank rule. So I'm going to say, let's go ahead and transfer that. And then we have PayPal. PayPal's another one. You can basically combine PayPal or get PayPal feeds in here as well. Or possibly if you can't get the feed directly going into QuickBooks, you can download the PayPal transaction if you do a lot of transactions in PayPal, and then upload them in a similar fashion. Set them up as a bank, upload the PayPal transactions. So again, you might have the same kind of situation. A lot of people have a situation where they have online kind of activity, and they basically get all, they're paying and receiving in PayPal from different areas. And then they want to transfer that to the bank account. Well, when you transfer it to the bank account, let's say this is our bank account, you also have a PayPal account. Now you're going to have a receive payment from the PayPal. So that's going to be increasing here. The other side should be decreasing the PayPal bank account. You could think about it as basically another bank account. But if you're using bank feeds on the PayPal side of things, then it's going to show up on the PayPal side of things as a decrease to the PayPal account, and the other side should be going here. So again, you could use the matching system to fix that. Like, it should be able to see each other if you put it to the other account. But sometimes when it's the bank feeds going both sides, it doesn't always pick it up properly, in my experience. So I like to just use a clearing account. So again, I'll put this to a clearing account, and then I'll have another the other PayPal account go into the clearing account, which should end up at 0 at the end of the day. So for example, if I go into this and I create a custom rule for it, and I say this is going to be the PayPal, and it's going to be money going out. I don't need the amount, once again, same kind of thing. And then I'm going to say it's a transfer, that's fine. And the asset is going to be, I'm going to call it a PayPal clearing account. Same kind of thing. And you may not need different clearing accounts. You might just use the same, the same clearing account for all these transactions. But it could be anytime you need, you have this thing where it's going to be going on both two sides of an account that you use bank feeds for. But I like to set up a different one each time. So it's not going to be a bank account. I'm going to put it into an other assets account, and we're going to put it into, I'm just going to say that PayPal clearing account. Okay, save and close. And then I'm going to save that. And there it is. And now let's add that one. I'm just going to transfer. And now let's take a look at our financials. So if I go back to the balance sheet and I refresh the balance sheet, closing up the old hamburger, holding down control and scrolling up, we're going to see that activity obviously in the checking account will now be feeding into the checking account. The ones I wanted to kind of look here is where we had basically those the clearing accounts. So you'll see in other assets down here, we have a PayPal clearing account of 15 and the transfer of the 75. And you can imagine the situation here. Why would that be? Because we recorded the bank feeds in the checking account and have not yet recorded them from the PayPal account and the savings account. So once we do, so you would expect then up here in the banking us to not only have a checking account but a PayPal account as a bank account and a savings account as a bank account. We would then download the bank feeds from the PayPal account and the banking account. And when the money, the other side of the transaction hit those bank feeds, we would set the other side to this clearing account down here. And once we did that, then the clearing accounts would be back down to 0. So these things are just reflecting the fact that we haven't hit the other side. The bank feeds haven't been recorded into the PayPal account and the transfer account. When they do, the PayPal account will go down by the 15,000, and the other side will go here, matching it out to 0. So that's going to, and this one will be increase in the savings account. The other side will go here, matching it out to 0. Let's take a look at the P&L and refresh the P&L, the profit and loss report. And I'm going to close this, or I opened it up there. I'll close it up. And then on the income, notice we have different categorizations of income. And again, this is useful for people that work online. If they work if you work a lot with Amazon, you get different incomes from Amazon, or you work with audiobooks, or you do kind of publishing of some kind. If you have a YouTube channel or things like that, and you get money from YouTube or AdSense or whatever, then you may want to categorize your income in some different way up here, because you might have the same customer giving you money, and you may want to then group that money in some type of way so you can have a better categorization of where that money is coming from. So this has helped us to basically break this stuff out. Amazon versus Amazon here, Audible books, we can have, other income, the Google AdSense down here. Then we have the advertising and marketing. I misposted something here. If I go into it, you'll note that I put the deposit into here for Google because I messed that up. I could always go back in here and change that. Now I can go back into it and say that one's messed up. I'm in the deposit slip now. I'm going to go down. It went to the Google AdSense, and then the account went to advertising. And it should be going into Google income, something like that. Save and close. And then if I go back up top and go back, notice why did it go into advertising? So it should be included up here now. Because the system tried to just help me out. They said, oh, it's Google. That must be advertising, even though it was a deposit and not money going out, which you would think it would have picked up. So QuickBooks isn't perfect when it suggests things to you. They're not always perfect. They're pretty good. They're getting better at it, but they're not always perfect. So then we have the car and truck that you'll recall we split out between the personal and business. These two we split out in the prior presentation. The taxes now being applied out here, that was a check. the telephone that we now broke out between these items for the telephone expense, and then the interest income down below.